So if we look in a book and say this is non-toxic, it does not mean that when it's on the nanoscale that it's non-toxic. It's different from the past when we make something and go, oops, once it's released, it's out there.
Our only hope is that scientists don't mess up.
A glass of whiskey is one of the best things. It scrambles the neurons, and then you can reconfigure your brain. It's like nanotechnology, right? It reconfigures your brain in a new pattern.
Oh dear. Of course, nanotechnology also has intriguing military applications. But let's not forget, existing military technology is perfectly adequate to ensure total global apocalypse. MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. It was this policy that America and Russia pursued during the Cold War in a bid to make the world a safer place. It led to nuclear armament on massive scale and the creation of a hair-trigger response mechanism which has already taken the world to the brink of nuclear showdown.
Today, it's estimated we have here in the United States about 2,000 nuclear warheads that can be launched within a matter of minutes. And there are a comparable number of nuclear warheads in Russia. And I think people don't realize that.
She said...
Thus far, nuclear holocaust has only been averted thanks to last-ditch diplomacy between the world's political leaders. But it wouldn't take much to set the doomsday clock ticking. It might be a simple diplomatic faux pas. Or it could be just an unbalanced world leader with a violent temper. Remember, the world's nuclear arsenal stands in readiness to be launched at a moment's notice. And once it starts, it'll be hard to stop.
This is war!
Nuclear war favors those who strike hardest and fastest. As a result, cautious politicians might be overruled by trigger-happy generals demanding immediate preemptive strikes.
It's official. It's war. Yes, it's finally happened, the big one. Bombs are dropping all over the United States.
The president has a military aide nearby at all times, and this military aide has a briefcase, what's called a nuclear football, and it has various nuclear war plans. But the thing is, you know, the president typically doesn't do these kind of exercises, and so the bottom line is the military commanders are really going to be calling the shots here.
Pulled up in their bunkers, those charged with executing the war plan would be subject to unimaginable pressures.
There have been a number of near misses, false radar readings, sometimes it might be a flock of geese, and the commander of that system only has a few minutes to make a decision to determine whether it's a false alarm or a true warning. There's the fear that because the timeline is so compressed, if we can't get the other side on the phone for whatever reason, we may assume the worst, saying, well, they don't want to talk with us, then maybe they actually did launch an attack.
Who knows what such pressure might do to a man's mind? In all probability, he tipped completely off his rocker.
We're all gonna die. Oh my God.
With each deadly atomic airburst, the need to react swiftly increases. A moment's hesitation might mean losing the ability to counterattack. In such a situation, it would surely be a case of better safe than sorry.
Oh, I've dropped my pen.
Those who survive in nuclear bunkers will eventually emerge into a terrible new world. A vast doomsday shroud of irradiated debris will blot out the sun and rain poison across the earth.
Within a matter of days, with all that particulate matter being forced up into the upper atmosphere, you could see the nuclear winter effect throughout the world in a matter of weeks to months and lasting many years. I don't want to frighten people about it. I don't want to make people paranoid, but I'm trying to do what I can to convince the United States government and the Russian government to relax away from this hair-trigger situation.
For our next twitch of the final curtain, get ready for another cosmic catastrophe. plague has always carried the threat of global apocalypse. In the 1300s, the Black Death wiped out almost half the population of Europe. But any notion that modern medicine will protect us from such a terrible fate in the future is wishful thinking.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, everyone thought that the whole kombucha was finished. You know, antibiotics could finish off bacteria, polio was on its way out, smallpox on its way out, we'll get rid of all of them. And I think that was kind of premature, really.
Some believe that man's inquisitive nature, far from affording him protection, has increased the threat of plague.
More pressure on land space, more pressure on farming areas, more pressure as we push into jungle areas and uncover more viruses. So I think the emerging viruses are going to get worse. But the biggest terrorist is Mother Nature. Some of these viruses are the worst and most deadly pathogens that we know about.
But whilst conventional science holds that deadly viruses typically originate in other species and then jump to humans, some scientists believe the biggest threat from plague could come from outer space.
Looking at the pattern of diseases and how they strike the Earth, I would say that every new strain of virus, new subtype of virus, has a space connotation to it.
If Chandra is right, it is possible an asteroid could one day deliver a deadly new strain of plague.
There is the possibility that sometime in the future there would be a strain of virus or bacterium that we have not encountered throughout our evolutionary history and cause absolute devastation.
And killer plague from outer space isn't the only concern. Deadly new bioweapons are also being developed in laboratories around the world. Fringe cults and apocalyptic madmen could right now be developing such bioweapons. As deadly as atomic bombs and far cheaper to produce, infection with a few particles can mean a slow, agonizing death. It might only take one moment of madness from an absent-minded boffin to release such a deadly new strain of plague. Once out of the lab, this grotesque killer would quickly begin to spread.
Anywhere in the world, infection is on our doorstep. We're all moving around the world, and within 9 hours, that virus can arrive here in London or indeed anywhere else in the world.
No one will be safe. This deadly invisible assassin will swiftly bring entire cities to a standstill.
There's two features of a virus we immediately look at. And what we ask is, how long is the incubation period? That's the time between the time you get infected and the time you show symptoms. And the other thing we look for is what's called its reproductive number. And its reproductive number is basically how many people are going to be infected by one person with that virus. If the reproductive number is high, and the incubation period is short, then you've got a problem on your hands.
This monster plague will bring death on an unprecedented scale. Economies will collapse. The medical system will be unable to cope. No one will be spared a terrible, ugly death. Of course, monster plague isn't the only disaster brewing in test tubes around the world. Time now to hear how we may be about to engineer ourselves into extinction as we reveal our penultimate planetary peril.